It was overshadowed earlier on this week, given the subsequent events of Charlie Kirk's assassination on Wednesday. But on Tuesday, in the House Oversight Committee that's looking into the whole Epstein affair and the government and FBI and CIA, any kind of elite institutional involvement into it, there was a drop of documents, and there have been further developments even since then, which have all led to Peter Mandelson being ousted from the UK government. Again, this is the third time that it has happened to him. With reference to the Epstein story, I want to preface all of this by saying I do not expect, you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but I do not expect that there will be anything more than a few sacrificial lambs thrown to the slaughter as a result of the Oversight Committee, because it does seem to be a story that involves basically all of the most important heads of state that we've seen pass through the US offices of the past 20 years, if not 30, 40 years. Many of the intelligence agencies who are actually the government of the world, and they're not going to give themselves up. You're not going to get a written statement from them all saying, here is exactly what happened. Here is all the people who were involved in it, and here is how we are going to punish them. What we are going to get is dribs and drabs of new information that might even end up becoming almost like the slop cycle. It might just be like, oh, here's some more added information regarding the Epstein story that doesn't really go anywhere, especially if you believe, like me, that whatever happened to the Epstein operation is that it's moved on. It's still going on, and there has simply been a replacement Epstein put in place that none of us have ever heard of. Maybe we have heard of him, but we just don't know that it's him. These kinds of affairs always go on with the intelligence communities. Blackmailing material is always being gathered by them for one reason or another, and they need somebody in charge of that. Despite that, though, the new information that we get is always interesting in putting together the wider story, as journalists like Whitney Webb have done, and anything extra that we can get can expand our understanding of who is involved in it. So while I'm not expecting, the United States government to indict the entire CIA and then start to try and extradite other foreign criminals in foreign intelligence agencies, whether that be MI6 or Mossad or any of the other ones that Epstein would have been in close contact with, it is still important to see what has been developing. Before I go into the drop of documents from Tuesday, one interesting thing that I sadly missed last time I covered part of this story was this Reason article which went over leaked emails where they found that Epstein, in the last 4 years of his life, was making inroads into security technology, particularly that he had partnered with the former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak. Bear in mind, this is in 2015, 7 years after his 2008 conviction on charges of human trafficking and inappropriate contact with minors, some as young as 14 years old. Ehud Barak was still willing to work with him as a partner, investing in a security tech startup called Reporty Homeland Security, now known as Carbine. The leaked emails, some of which feature in here, show that there was a number of times where they were trying to get contact with and meetings set up with Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel has addressed this and said that he had met Epstein kind of informally a number of times, but that he wasn't fully aware of who he was speaking to at the time. So kind of an evasion of all of that. So that's just some of the information that came out a few weeks ago as reported by Reason. But the big thing that happened was that the Oversight Committee released all of these documents. I have not read over all of them myself. There are 4 drops which include documents, financial documents, agreements that he'd made, a lot of official writings that had his signature on it. But the big one that people were looking at was the elusive birthday files, the 50th birthday book from 2003, which was 238 pages long and featured written and typed messages and signed typed messages from many people that he had been involved with in the preceding years up until he was 50. Of course, and there is some very interesting stuff here. There was lots of photographs, including one that you can see here where he's holding a large check. A lot of the information has been redacted to save the identities of some of the women who were involved. This is a pay to Jeffrey Epstein signed to Donald Trump for $22,500. Very strange developments there. If I carry on with this, they appear to include messages from the likes of Donald Trump and the UK ambassador to Washington, then UK ambassador to Washington, Lord Peter Mandelson. The one from Trump, if it loads, is this going to load, Samson? Here it is. Appears to be. Now, Trump has denied that this was written by him and denied that this is his signature. And but it says, voiceover, there must be more to life than having everything. Donald, yes, there is, but I won't tell you what it is. It's written in some kind of strange dialogue. It essentially ends with, a pal is a wonderful thing. Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret. And it is drawn within the outline of a nude woman. Very strange, but nothing too incriminating by itself, just very strange. It's well known at this point that they had been friends for about 15 years by 2003, and that it was around that time that they ended up having a fallout as a result of some wires getting crossed over the both of them trying to outbid each other on some townhouse they were both looking at. Some of the more interesting stuff in here as well, though, is that there is an extended selection of pages written by Peter Mandelson, including photographs, where he essentially writes him a really loving little story, where he says that how he parachuted into his life and you were a man of mystery who gave me so many interesting opportunities and introduced me to so many interesting friends that I had to entertain. Sometimes you...
Wait.
That is a picture of
hang on.
Peter Mandelson, by the way.
Interesting is in commas. Interesting friends. What does that refer to?
I guess we'll have to figure it out ourselves. That'll be up to speculation because nothing in here is explicitly incriminating.
That's two friends talking in code about something you're not supposed to talk about.
Yes,
indeed,
it certainly is. And it ends with saying that you would parachute back in, taking you by surprise. And no matter what happens, you take me to your islands and hang out with his friends, which has in brackets yum yum. Very strange thing to include there. And but wherever he is in the world, he remains my best pal.
So Peter Mandelson was a massive dirty. Can I say it?
I think it would be defamation. I don't believe you could say it.
The producer is giving me the thumbs. I can't say. Okay, somebody in the chat say what I'm thinking.
We all know what you're trying to say, Dan, so
right.
Carry on. But it is interesting that Epstein was friends with so many people, going all the way up to the highest halls of power within British government, American government. There's an included message from seemingly signed by former President Bill Clinton, which references Epstein's childlike curiosity. Basically, everything in here seems to be referencing sexuality of some form in a very pervy and disturbing way. As well as the birthday book, the documents released includes Epstein's will, his contact books, agreements he signed with prosecutors, and financial transactions and holdings. One of the most disturbing things that I saw in here, which again seems to suggest that everybody in here, or at least a significant number of people in this book, knew what was actually going on, is, if I can find it scrolling down, a particular illustration drawn as though it was by a child. Where is it? Here it is. Look at this, Dan. Here is a picture drawn of a younger Epstein in 1983 handing out lollipops to small girls, and then in 2003, presumably those same girls, all in various stages of nudity, giving him a massage on the beach.
Right.
They're rubbing it in your face. They never expected this to come out, and this was sketched in the book, but it's clear they all knew what was going on, they just didn't say. I don't know if this could be more explicit, but it doesn't need to be more explicit.
That was in the book that obvious. These people were signing.
Yes. Again, Donald Trump has denied that it's his actual signature when, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal referenced this and found a letter and said that it was a part of this birthday book, which was initially denied to have existed. I believe that is why he is currently taking legal action against them for slander or defamation of some kind. So that is the line that is being said right now. But anybody who did knowingly sign this is very, very suspect if they were also aware that there were images like this in it, which suggest that everybody knew what Epstein was doing all along, which was trafficking young girls, enticing young girls in, and then taking advantage of them. It couldn't be more clear-cut.
So not only was this not actually real, apparently, but
it is, because we've got it now.
Right.
We've got the full thing.
But then the client list as well, that we've been assured is also not real, is...
For legal reasons...
His contact books.
Oh, contact books.
For legal reasons, I should point out that my earlier comments do not suggest that I think that Peter Mandelson was doing anything whatsoever with young girls.
Or boys, just to be clear. And one of the other interesting things that, for instance, Benny Johnson pointed out is that in some of the documents there was scribbles in the margins suggesting he is the boyfriend of blah-de-blah. Don't know if that's Ghislaine Maxwell. I don't believe Ghislaine Maxwell was redacted in any of these, so this must be some other girl who was seeing at the time, saying, we think he works for the CIA. And on that, you mentioned Mike Benz in the last segment. Mike Benz has also highlighted this, and then highlighted that one of the usual things that the CIA does is that if the media report on anybody as having had connections with the CIA, they will run a name trace, because of course not everybody in the CIA is going to be aware of everybody who's running particular operations for them at any one time, but it will always be in a database somewhere. And back in July 17th, he looked and found that there has been no CIA name trace done on Jeffrey Epstein, because you can find information on who has been name traced by them. And now, by the time he was posting this on the 9th of September, still nothing. The CIA seem very uninterested in how involved in their own operations Jeffrey Epstein may or may not have been. And that's one of the other reasons that, again, I'm not expecting there to be some gigantic indictment of the intelligence agencies come off of the end of this. The Oversight Committee, independent as they may be, simply will not have the power to overthrow one of the most important and powerful agencies in the entire world. The intelligence agencies, whether that be MI6, CIA, Mossad, whoever, seem to have a blank check to do whatever they want and have done for years. You could say it goes back to JFK. And again, I expect that there were multiple intelligence agencies involved in that whole operation. There was also something else that came out, which was around the same time. Mike Johnson had said that Trump was actually an FBI informant on the Epstein case, and people were reporting on that, but he has since walked back those comments, saying that he didn't know if he used the right word. I said FBI informant, I'm not sure, I wasn't there. So that was a nothing burger. That was a nothing burger. The next thing that came of all of this was that more information was released about Peter Mandelson. And just to remind you all of who Peter Mandelson is, he was one of the trio, the three amigos, who formed the New Labour government with Blair at its head in 1997. He was the guy who, I believe since 1985, had been the director of their communications. He was their PR guy. He built the New Labour image and framework. So he was one of the major reasons that we got Blair in 97 in the first place. And remember what he said was that they, back in 2004, I believe, sent out search parties to get immigrants to come into this country.
Yes.
And it's in the same article that we get the very famous quote that Andrew Nether, a former advisor, said that the mass immigration policy was designed to rub the right's nose in diversity. So that's the kind of quality of character we're talking about
I
here.
remember Peter Mandelson from the time, right? And I remember watching a documentary before Labour got into power, where Peter Mandelson, he had a moustache back then, but it fell off as well. He had a moustache back then, and in this documentary, he's taking the BBC through his place, and he's complaining about how poor he is and about how he's got rising damp coming up his walls and stuff like that. After about 4 years of being in government, he had to resign for the first of about 3 times, I think, over scandals if he kept on buying multi-million-pound properties. So quite the turnaround on a minister's salary to go from complaining about how poor you are to getting involved in multiple scandals for multi-million pound property purchases. I don't know how that happened.
Well, previously he'd been forced to resign twice. This is now the third time. The first time, I think, was in the first year of Labour getting in, and it turned out that he had accepted a loan so that he could buy a house of over £350,000 and hadn't declared
And
it.
the next one was much bigger, I remember.
Yes, it was a lot bigger. And then he was forced to resign and then was straight back in government the year after in 99.
Yep. He's been sacked a lot for his behaviour.
But he always gets back in, and we'll see if this latest sacking ends up sticking or not, because this one ties it all together back to Epstein, where it reveals that Peter Mandelson had a very, as we know now from the birthday book, had a very close relationship with Epstein. That was going back to 2003. So the latest all of that information from the birthday book would relate to is to 2003. We now have information through leaked emails from an old closed email address that Bloomberg and The Sun were able to get a hold of, that this relationship carried on until potentially at least 2013, which again, like Ehud Barak being friends with him in 2015, starting business deals with him, 2013 is 5 years after his original conviction. So that goes to show the kind of character that we're talking about here. So according to this article, Bloomberg News obtained more than 100 previously unreported emails between Epstein and Mandelson from 2005 through to 2010, casting new light on the relationship between the two. In an interview, because of course this news got out ahead, here's some more of the images that were released from the book. They sporadically put a few of these emails out through this. They've retyped them up. So this is one from 2008 when he was going through his original conviction, saying from Peter Mandelson to Jeffrey Epstein, saying, "Reminder, you're fighting back, so you need strategy, strategy, strategy. Remember the art of war." There's more of those dotted throughout here as well. Let's see if I can find another one. This one was through 2005, where Mandelson was asking, where are you going to the island at Christmas? I'm having trouble getting air tickets. What are your plans and do I fit into them? We don't know exactly which island that he's referring to because Epstein owned a few, but I don't imagine that much good happened on any of them. A number of photos. Here's 2006. Jeffrey Epstein, male friend, clearly Mandelson, on island. Here's one 2006. I find it impossible to believe this is from Epstein to Mandelson, but the district attorney said yesterday that he'd got the facts wrong, so they were in constant close contact with this. About it all, Mandelson tried to come out ahead of the story on Wednesday morning in an interview with The Sun, expressing remorse for his relationship, saying, "I have a tremendous sense of regret, not only that I met him in the first place, but that I continued the association, and I took at face value the lies that he had fed me and many others." So he was just convinced by Epstein's legendary charisma that this
isn't a casual
anything.
Relationship in the slightest.
No.
No, this is a very, very close relationship.
This is a best pal, as
Yes.
he put it in his own words.
Yeah, he said he knew that these emails were going to come out and they're going to be embarrassing. After Bloomberg approached Mandelson seeking comment, Sun published numerous excerpts from the emails and reported that Mandelson did not dispute the veracity of the messages. So he knows he has not claimed that there is anything that is a lie in here that has been made up. Mandelson has not said anything to refute the accuracy of these emails. So here's one of the most interesting ones. The day before Epstein reported to Florida jail in June 2008 to begin serving time for soliciting sex from a minor, bear in mind with that conviction, he pled guilty. This was not a jury trial in which the amount of evidence was weighed so heavily against him that he was put away by jury or by a judge. This was a guilty plea. He received an outraged message from a friend anguished at the injustice of it all. "I think the world of you, and I feel hopeless and furious about what has happened," Peter Mandelson wrote. "I can still barely understand it. It just could not happen in Britain." And to be fair, that's true, because we don't jail paedophiles in Britain, for some reason. Although they barely jailed Epstein, given the sweetheart deal that he was given after Acosta was told that he belonged to intelligence, which we still don't have extra information on the story regarding that. Epstein's deal, I believe, commuted his sentence down to, I think it was 12 or 18 months, and he didn't actually have to be at the cell all that often, so he wasn't really put in prison. And yet Peter Mandelson still felt absolutely outraged at the grave injustice that had been done to his friend.
So looking back now, it is bizarre, now I think about it, just how Teflon Mandelson was under the last Labour government. And he kept on racking up titles. So I just checked.
He's a lord, yes.
Secretary of State for Trade and Industry, Secretary of State for Northern Ireland, Secretary of State of Business Innovations and Skills, First Secretary of State, Life Peerage, European Commissioner, Privy Councillor. I mean, honestly, you wouldn't have been surprised one morning to wake up under the last Labour government to discover that he'd been made an archbishop. I mean, this guy just got everything handed to him. And looking at that in respect of this, I'm wondering, what was he a conduit? Was he just too useful? Was there something else going on?
He does seem to be a political survivor, and he does seem to have a lot of utility for people in power. Bear in mind, again, we're 10 days into the new government reconvening again?
Oh, it's phase 2.
Yeah, we're in phase 2 now, and he'd been made back in February ambassador to Washington.
The only actionable thing I've seen in phase 2 is that Mandelson got sacked. I don't know if there is more to phase 2.
I mean, they also lost Angela Rayner.
Oh, Angela Rayner and Mandelson have gone
within 10 days.
Yes,
impressive numbers. Finally, as part of the a similar June 2008 email, he said to Epstein regarding his jail time, you have to be incredibly resilient, fight for early release, and be philosophical about it as much as you can. The whole thing has been years of torture, and now you have to show the world how big a person you are and how strong. Your friends stay with you and love you. This is after a guilty plea to soliciting sex with a minor. There is extra information held within these emails that Bloomberg reports on, including the fact that Mandelson and Epstein seem to have been organising a number of suspicious meetings with somebody who had only been referred to as Mr. Big at the same time, with Lefke, who, if I remember correctly, is an attorney called Lefkowitz. Yes, Jay Lefkowitz, who was one of Epstein's best defense lawyers. So there are a number of meetings set up between Mr. Big and Lefkowitz, who I believe, it says here, yes, as well, Lefkowitz had been a senior advisor to former US President George W. Bush's administration as well. So again, connections everywhere. There is also an extensive connection and contact made with JP Morgan Chase & Co. throughout all of this, but that is somewhat outside of the remit of this segment, because now let's take a look at the consequences for Peter Mandelson. Well, he was sacked. For the first time in his now 3 resignations, he didn't resign himself. He refused to resign and has officially been sacked as ambassador to Washington. Yes. The Prime Minister asked the Foreign Secretary to withdraw Peter Mandelson as ambassador. The Foreign Office released a full statement stating that in light of the additional information in emails written by Peter Mandelson, Prime Minister has asked the Foreign Secretary to withdraw him as ambassador. The email showed that the depth and extent of Peter Mandelson's relationship with Epstein is materially different from that known at the time of his appointment. In particular, Mandelson's suggestion that Jeffrey Epstein's first conviction was wrongful and should be challenged is new information. In light of that, and mindful of the victims of Epstein's crimes, he has been withdrawn as ambassador with immediate effect. This is putting more pressure on Starmer's government. Again, not only has he lost Angela Rayner, in quick succession now he's lost Mandelson, who, as Dan has pointed out, seems to be a very useful political creature to have on your side. There is now a temporary ambassador, I believe Jay Roscoe, has been appointed as temporary ambassador to Washington. Who knows who they're going to put in the permanent position. And this has also raised a lot of questions about the relationship between the between the people who vetted him in the first place, because he seems to have had a strong relationship with McSweeney, who was the one who vetted him in the first place. There was also reports from the Times that the government has admitted to basically already knowing about how extensive his relationship with Epstein had been, even keeping in contact after the original 2008 conviction. So Is it simply the severity of the relationship which has made them reconsider? The fact that he thought it was wrong? What addition has this made that has pushed them over the edge? Or is it simply that now that this is a public matter that everybody knows about, it makes them look bad and they're trying to save their own skin? Because I can't imagine that Labour were really wringing their hands about all of this before Bloomberg and The Sun were reporting on it.
Who are the men that pick for scraps amongst the ruins at the end of history? You should know, because you encounter them every day. Between the towering buildings of a fallen empire, we find the Fellahin, the historyless men, who know nothing of the turning of the cosmic wheel and find themselves outside of civilization itself. Cut loose from the great chain of being, they represent the loam into which our dying culture will return. That is, unless we choose to take up the burden once again. This Fellahin condition is the subject we explore in issue 4 of Islander magazine, on sale while stocks last and available worldwide at shop.lotusseaters.com.